I love the Super Smash Bros. Series. The idea of bringing Nintendo's most iconic character—
Plants? This is my video.
Jack, I thought this was my video.
Settle it in Smash! Pikachu! Ridley!
Okay, now where were we? I love the Super Smash Bros. Series. The idea of bringing Nintendo's most iconic characters and franchises together for a massive slobberknocker party still is to this day incredibly novel. It's continued to branch out and represent franchises with more niche followings, even playing a part in building new followings and brighter futures. And with it also getting some third-party franchises in there, it's sort of become a celebration of video games as a whole. It's a cultural phenomenon that I will always thank series creator Masahiro Sakurai for. Seriously, thank you Sakurai, for all your hard work you put into this series. And to celebrate it for its 25th anniversary, I decided a countdown of my favorite playable fighters was in order. All of these characters bring their own way of fighting and series representation into the mix, and depending on how they play or any personal connections, you're bound to find some that just click with you. For me personally in this list, while I will be referring to how the characters are in Ultimate a lot, since it's the best source of reference for right now, I will also include their iterations from Brawl and Smash 4 if they have any, especially if they left any personal memories. This also might be obvious, but personal preferences are the driving force of this list, not exactly competitive viability. I am not a competitive player, and I have tons of favorites that go against what tier lists say, so let's settle it in Smash. Since my choices will be up, down, and all around, I figure it's appropriate to start with the character most longtime fans will recognize, and one I have a very nostalgic connection to. Even if I played Melee very sparingly with my brother and one of his friends, Brawl was the first game in the series I got attached to. The fact that my brother and I finally had this experience on our Wii was enthralling, and there were many characters we grew attached to for one reason or another, with Kirby being one of the biggest examples. Given my age at the time, my main reasons for gravitating towards Kirby are definitely ones 12-year-old me would come up with. I really got a kick out of his stone and hammer moves, which I found so absurdly over the top conceptually, and fun to use because of how much damage they did, and his ability to copy other fighters and steal a move from them because of the funny results depending on the opponents. Him doing the Falcon Punch with this voice line in Brawl was, and still is, priceless. Never gets old. I did not have any context of the Kirby series at the time, which probably played a part, but as time has gone on, now that I've gotten better at playing Smash, and have played quite a large number of Kirby games, I still think Kirby is a blast to play. It's really fun to use the likes of Stone and Hammer to catch opponents off guard and land some big damage on them, slow as their charge-ups may be. Heck, the Stone in particular can make for a decent shield in the right scenario, and being able to act out of it in the air is great for mix-ups. The Final Cutter is also handy, especially since the descent spikes, and with the right opponents, copying abilities is still fun to do and might be your ticket to victory at the right moment, or his classic Suck and Spit is also an option. He also has really fun throws and aerials that can lead to combos, with the latter having great frame data. His dash attack and ultimate is really strong and easy to fall for because of how instantaneous it is, and his physique means you can pull off some really funny dodges. The two things that personally keep Kirby from being any higher for me is that his airspeed and grab range leave a lot to be desired. His throws may be great, but an iffy grab range doesn't do them many favors. Doesn't help that Kirby's on the layer end of the character roster, meaning he can be sent flying pretty easily. But Kirby has enough good going for him to be a very fun wild card of a character. You'll never know what you'll get with him in a match, but it's always super fun and charming. I'll admit the nostalgia factor plays a big part, but at the end of the day, this little pig marshmallow always does his best.
Kirby wins!
I can't think of any other way to introduce this character. Roll it!
I'm really feeling it!
Memes about that line are one thing that always make me feel better. I was really happy to see Shulk get into Smash 4 when he was first revealed, mostly because I really wanted to get Xenoblade 1 at the time, and I was certainly not disappointed with how he is as a fighter. Shulk may not seem like he's got much going for him at first. It is cool that his magic glowy sword has got excellent range, making it fun to land some moves at just the right distance, and he's also got a counter that looks awesome and feels good to pull off, especially on deadlier moves. Shulk's frame data and attack speed are not the greatest, and some moves do leave him open for long periods of time. Backslash in particular became a meme, because most of the time, it won't snap to ledges, especially in Smash 4. But the Monado isn't just a cool glowy sword, it's holding far more secrets than you can imagine. If the great attack range and other attacks have varying usefulness were the bread of Shulk's moveset, then the Monado arts are definitely the butter. Using one of these will give you a temporary buff at the cost of a weakness or two, so depending on what you use and when, each move will have its strengths accentuated in some form. You can increase your jump height and airspeed for edge guarding, increase ground speed and get surprise strikes, simply increase your damage output or launch distance, or reduce your own. It helps get tactical when you whip these out, because each one is on a timer and a short one in ultimate, and that's why Shulk is a difficult character to properly use in both games. Like, you gotta make split-second decisions with these if you don't want your opponent to have visions of what you're going to do. But this kind of versatility is really why I love playing as him. He already has fun attacks to use, like his aerials are great for edge guarding, air slash is a great up B at a shield option, and well-placed smash attacks can really be handy if your opponent is in a weird spot. But the Monado arts really give you a lot of options to approach your opponents and determine what will be the most helpful. Almost kind of like the original game. Getting inside your opponent's head basically feels like you're changing a potential future. And with Monado in hand and player and character mind as one, Shulk can be unbeatable.
I can feel the power!
I'm sure most of us have characters we like to play as for an adrenaline rush, like to pick him for the experience of really fast matches where strong moves go flying and all that. For me, Little Mac is one of my go-tos for that feeling. Mac here is an absolute beast when it comes to his ground game. Blisteringly fast ground speed, tons of options to launch opponents or put them in a spot where you can easily send them flying, amazingly fun specials, and a KO punch that basically kills at most percents, make Mac the epitome of a rushdown character. But using all of this generally does require more brain power than you think. Because Mac's a joke in the air, and arguably has one of the worst recoveries in the game, even with the improvements it got in Ultimate, his weaknesses are incredibly exploitable, and any opponent who can gauge them in the amount of time they have to think can easily beat him. But not only is that the point, as he is a boxer, but it gives the one playing Mac Baby more opportunities to treat the match like one. You can easily not give the opponent the chance to close their fist if you're able to beat them to the punch, and if they do have that chance, then resort to studying what they do and wait for them to make a mistake and capitalize on that opening. Kinda like what you do in Punch-Out. That feels so good to do with Little Mac because of the amount of ground combos and ways he can just punch the lights out of the foe, especially with the KO punch. Ooh, intoxicating. I can understand why Mac never really caught on in terms of competitive play, as he has some of the worst flaws out of any character, but he also has some of the best assets that make him a joy to come back to for a great time. Heck, Mac is one of the biggest characters I enjoy playing Dittos with. The fact that insanely strong attacks can come at any moment is nerve-wracking, yet also exciting, and anyone who accomplishes that, regardless of where they land, is a champion in my book.
Little Mac wins.
All yours, Mac.
Smash Ultimate was already a phenomenal game as it was at launch, but the DLC fighters made it even better. It was wonderful to see other games and franchises, new and classic alike, get some representation for the first time in Smash, and I admire how much work went into them to make them not only fun, but also replicate the general feel of their place of origin. Of the 12 included, 13 if you decide to count Pyra and Mythra as separate fighters, which I don't, but the website does, 5 ended up making the final call on this list. I think one of the simpler ones will make a fine introduction to them here. As someone who only heard about Banjo-Kazooie from various countdown artists, and how the series had basically been in hibernation for almost a decade after Nuts and Bolts did its Nuts and Bolts thing, even I was incredibly happy to see them join the roster as well, as I was with how they play. Banjo-Kazooie really don't have any mechanics that are really deep, like Joker with Arsene, Hero with a pop-up menu, or Terry with his go attacks. The most complex it gets for them is having a limited number of Wonder Wings to use in a single stock, but considering how strong it is, how stylish you can be with it, and how it really doesn't care about most of the counters in the game, I say that's completely fair. But beyond that, Banjo-Kazooie are pretty straightforward, but in an effective way. They're reasonably fast on the ground, meaning they can easily close the gap on the opponents, and being on the higher end of the waitlist does them many favors in terms of survivability. They also have really solid aerials that make for good combo potential, with a really strong forward air, a down throw that buries opponents and can easily be topped up with a smash attack, and eggs that can be used for advantageous positioning, even good edge guarding material for opponents going low. Though, seriously Kazooie, what have you been eating to make these eggs? The grenades especially. You know what, don't answer that. These moves are all fun to use, but what I appreciate the most about Banjo and Kazooie is that for the most part, they feel like a character who could be right at home not just an Ultimate-based roster, but any Smash Games-based roster. With how simple they are to get into, and given their origins in a 1998 3D platformer made for one of the consoles that put 3D gaming on the map, as opposed to other characters who come from games that are more mechanically involved, including the likes of traditional fighting games complete with their inputs, Banjo-Kazooie feel like a very welcome breath of fresh air. Combined with their really expressive and charming animations, some of which you might get the reference if you played the game, as well as their voice lines being completely brought over from the N64 games without the compression, and it all comes together as a reminder that some things about the late 90s are still pretty neat. Even if we don't get another Banjo game soon, having them here is a sign that people will remember them for a long time. You'll love to see it.
Banjo and Kazooie win!
I was not a very experimental player back when I played Brawl. I really didn't care about being better, so much as sticking to my comfort zones, which got to be a little much most of the time. That's why as the years went on, I started to branch out with its roster, which led to me trying out one of the weirder choices on it, Zelda. I always thought she looked way cooler and more fun to play as compared to Peach when focusing on the Subspace Emissary. I had a lot of fun playing as her, namely when not taking Sheik into account, because she had a lot of really strong moves. Her aerials and Did's Fire were especially satisfying to land, but as time has gone on, my appreciation for Zelda has only gone up with each passing game. With Sheik becoming a separate character, Zelda got more freedom to really show her magical prowess. The specials she had before are as useful as they always were. I especially love using Furora's Wind in Ultimate, but the Fate of Slash is really good too for mix-ups, especially in Ultimate with all the ways you can potentially combo off of it. Her strong aerials are still there as well, but with her having decent startup combo options, namely with her neutral air, up tilt, and down throw, it feels like you have more of an opportunity to land these and really send the opponent's percent skyrocketing. It's all fun because Zelda as a fighter is pretty unorthodox. Her playstyle is reliant on having just the right amount of space between her and her opponents, and it is difficult to get right. And I'm usually not too big on zoners, that's why I don't get into some characters like Villager or Isabelle, but in Zelda's case, I don't feel like the lead up to those big blows is as clunky comparatively, and the big blows do feel satisfying, and I feel those are the biggest distinctions. I'll admit that Ultimate's rendition is the main reason why Zelda ranks here, because I feel like this one does what she wants to be the best. Then for as much as I like Twilight Princess Zelda's design, I like this one way more. But I feel like playing as her in prior games, and seeing what exactly changed in between them, to seeing what she is now, made things feel all the more magical.
Zelda win!
And while we're on unorthodox characters, even for Rosalina getting to Smash seemed like an inevitability, given how much she got ever since her introduction, I was still overjoyed to see her be part of the roster. It's funny, because she was a character I really wasn't thinking of for Smash Bros., because Mario was still, understandably, the most represented series even back then. But hey, sometimes the best gifts are the ones you didn't know you wanted or needed, so you bet I played a lot of her. In Smash 4 at least. I still love her in Ultimate, but you know when you got this roster, sometimes it's hard to choose who you want to play as. Rosalie is also unusual as a fighter, because just about every part of her kit relies on the Luma she's carrying around. It's what gives her versatility, acting as the source of two of her specials, and extending the reach of several of her normal moves. Rosa's first special in particular has her launching the Luma like a projectile, and while this is useful as an attack on its own, its biggest utility is to send the Luma farther away so it can nail hits on its own. There are so many ways you can use this to your benefit, and she can score combos easily with the right setup. Helps that the B button can be used to recall the Luma at any point. The Luma can also act as a shield for Rosa, as when it's in front, it'll be the one to take a projectile, with Rosa herself not getting hurt. It's not wise to rely on this, as it does have its own health bar, and if it dies either by losing that health or being knocked into the blast zone, it'll take a bit for a fresh one to spawn in, but Rosa's still plenty capable on her own. She has a lot of good solo attacks, including ones where she can draw items and neutralize some projectiles, and fantastic aerial coverage with a great recovery move, but the gap in power and utility with the Luma is just right to the point where it's ideal to keep it around, especially considering how susceptible Rosa is being KO'd early, but you're not a complete sitting duck without one. Rosalina is definitely another difficult character to use, but I really enjoy what you can do with potential setups, and even when concerning Rosa on her own, her capabilities to handle certain threats just make things better. She's an absolute shooting star of a character that to me is a wish come true.
Rosalina and Roma win!
Another character I was overjoyed to see be part of the roster? Don't mind if I do. Yeah, unlike Mario, I basically had no connection to Metroid back when I played Brawl. I enjoyed really Subspace Emissary boss encounters, but nothing in me screamed, I want this character to be playable. Years later, when I learned how the Metroid series was treated in the 2010s, I eventually began to agree that it needs more than just 2 forms of Samus, despite being unsure if they can make it really work. So to see that they actually did, and have him be the newcomer announced after the Everyone Is Here trailer, felt like a declaration that Metroid will live. And man, I love how satisfying they made Ridley's trailer, and how he feels to play. Despite how many playable characters there have been that become synonymous with their numerous boss encounters, Ridley feels like that dichotomy was adopted and imagined in a playable format. I mean, a lot of his attacks are heavily telegraphed, meaning the opponent can easily prepare for them if you follow boss design 101. So, don't follow boss design 101, shake things up and get inside your opponent's head, get them into a position where you can land a telegraphed move on them more easily, and you'll send their damage percent into the stratosphere, implying you don't kill them immediately, which Ridley can with the right setup. All these attacks are super gratifying to land. You can really be cheeky with the side and up specials if you catch your opponents, especially the up special, as it can spike if you're going at a downward angle, and his down special is just ruthless and can give you a free invitation to just take a stock right there on the spot. Considering that Ridley actually did have full-fledged boss encounters in both Brawl and Smash 4, with him getting to fight by your side in the ladder, depending on if you hit him at the right time, getting to control this vicious pterodactyl and just unleash your inner demon feels nothing short of liberating, and the amount of thought and effort that went into designing him is truly amazing. I really hope he permanently stays, because his inclusion with that trailer is basically Smash history at this point.
Ridley wins.
I'm sure we all have those characters in Smash that we really did not expect to enjoy as much as we did. Like, you look at them and really don't expect much, but you end up loving how they feel and just keep on coming back for more. I have quite a few of those, including my number 18. My biggest takeaway from Mewtwo getting to Smash 4 was that DLC was going to be utilized in Smash Bros. I wasn't overly excited that Mewtwo was coming back, not sure if it was the fact that he wouldn't bring any lacking Pokemon representation, or some people thinking Greninja was Mewtwo during his trailer, but when looking at just that on its own with no DLC context, I thought it was just cool, and nothing more.
And then I played as him.
It's pretty natural to have some favorites give you that feeling that you're suddenly in control of the room, and can easily bend what you want to your will. While I can name some more,
Mewtwo
is an easy example I can think of. He has a fantastic mix of moves great for setting the opponent up for a combo, or a strong move, and numerous KO options. Despite the disadvantages of being late and floaty, the latter is favorable for a lot of his attacks. You can easily launch Shadow Balls from absurd heights, and use his jumps to keep combos going with things like his neutral aerial and his side B weirdly enough, before slashing at them with his forward air that's dang near instantaneous, or use his down air if they get the idea to resist or go low. That side B can also be used as a reflector. He's got fantastic attack speed and frame data on his tilts in case you want to juggle to get things going, and even his throws have many practical uses, with the up throw even being a good KO option. Everything about Mewtwo just flows naturally into one another, and properly controlling him feels like I know how to use the absolute power I have. If it's the character, Give Mewtwo is confident in itself, and can back up the claims of its strength. I mean, get a little of some of his taunt and attack animations, and how he's practically being assertive towards everyone, but it just makes the experience all the better.
Mewtwo wins.
Imagine disliking a character in one game, and then growing more attached to him starting with YouTube videos. That's basically my experience with Ganondorf. This might be a spicy take, but I didn't like playing as Ganondorf in Brawl. He was definitely packing power, but not only was there so little you could do against anyone who knew what they were doing, none of it really felt good to use. However, in Smash 4, thanks to some videos I saw at the time, I really began to grow more attached to him, to the point where he was among my most used characters in online battles. Ganondorf actually felt like he had more than just moves that just hurt individually. While he is still among the slowest fighters in any Smash game, and his large size makes him easy to hit, it's much easier to come up with setups that make landing moves like his Warlock Punch and his down air not only more rewarding, but more ideal. His overall survivability also feels like it was improved. Minus his recovery, but you take what you can get. Everything about Ganondorf just felt more natural, and as stated earlier, I value that in a fighter. And all this is before you take into account how much better he is in Ultimate. Yeah, it's a shame they lost the Gan sign in the transition, as that was one of my favorite things to do with him in Smash 4, but the rest of his moves feel even better to use, so I can get over that. The general game of pressuring your opponent before they do the same to you is taken a step further thanks to the new toys he has to play with. The sword he gets for his smash attacks is especially nifty, as it can KO most of the roster so early, it practically became a meme. I am always kept on the edge of my seat when I'm fighting another Ganondorf because of that, but when I play as him, man, I feel like I'm having the time of my life. And if it's a Ditto match, well, that's even better. Also, I wonder how some people who made jokes about Gandalf not using a sword in the Brawl and Smash 4 days feel about that. Be careful what you wish for.
Wins!
No matter how many cool new characters we get in Smash, or how many new fans we get with each passing installment, I'd like to ask, who doesn't love Captain Falcon? That was what immediately got me hooked on him, and everything else from his playstyle to the vibe he gives off just made me love him even more. He's incredibly balanced all across the board, with great speed on the ground and the air, making edge guarding easy and off-stage play thrilling. Decent weight so it takes a bit more to take care of him, though not as much as the heavies, and a good variety of moves with some that do okay damage, but have great range and frame data, like his neutral, up, and back aerials, and his amazing jab combo, and some that make for great finishers, including the Knee of Justice, and who could forget the almighty every time. But all this shows that the game doesn't just want you to rush down your opponent with quick and strong strikes, it wants you to rush them down and look awesome while doing it. Falcon here is a character that is just exuding style. The amount of moves that can spike, the knee, the Falcon Punch, and even his taunts are so wildly overblown in presentation that it's hard not to have the most joyful smile when doing it all in game. I feel he's a character that anyone can get the hang of in due time, which really helps out. The casual players can just have the time of their lives with what makes Falcon the captain, but competitive players can really find ways to string this all together into plays that are beyond hype. He's a fighter that I both love watching, fighting against, and playing as with all that he's capable of. He's been a Smash Bros. Icon since the beginning for a reason, and I'll always be willing to show him my moves.
Captain Falcon wins!
Smash 4 had a really solid lineup of DLC characters. It was cool to see veterans reimagined and refined from their earlier appearance, but I love how much it went further with third-party representation. Snake and Sonic and Brawl was when the ball got rolling, Mega Man and Pac-Man eventually expanded on it in Smash 4's base roster, then Ryu getting in by the DLC was when things started to get crazy, and then it just went wild with our next fighter, Cloud. As someone who had never played the original Final Fantasy VII until 2019, I could not believe what I was seeing when I first witnessed the announcement of Cloud getting to Smash 4. The way the build-up was handled in that trailer, the fact that this was one of a couple characters that really began to push the boundaries of who could get into Smash, and bring in fan favorites from world-famous games in general, rather than just ones that have a strong history with Nintendo, it was a borderline historic moment. And Cloud absolutely delivered on showing how he earned his title as Soldier First Class. Despite him carrying that giant sword around, he's not as slow as you'd expect on the ground, in the air, or with quite a few of his attacks. But because he's carrying that giant sword around, his attacks have some of the best range in the game, period. His aerials always trip me up when I'm facing him, namely with the speed of the neutral and up air, and the fact that his forward and down air can spike. He even has a projectile that's handy for getting the ball rolling on approaches, and his up B can also spike on the descent, kinda like Kirby's. Cloud's ridiculously flexible and dynamic with how he can approach any fighter in this roster, even before you take his limit break into account. But when you do, he becomes even faster and has access to upgraded specials that can do truckloads of damage. The upgraded climb headser can even be used for mind games because of how much better it is for recovery, especially compared to how handy it is for recovery at base value, which is not very. The limit meter can even be charged a little bit faster in Ultimate, so by all means, go to town with whatever you want in that state, and a reward will be waiting for you. There's barely anything I dislike about how Cloud is as a fighter. The closest thing I can think of is the fact that they didn't give him English voice acting, likely for union contract reasons, but that's a pretty small gripe. Used to be how underrepresented Final Fantasy VII used to be in Smash, but that was remedied with all that the Sephiroth pack brought in. Playing as Cloud is such a blast because he has enough mechanical depth, yet the learning curve really isn't that steep. It's actually pretty smooth to a point where you could ride a motorcycle on it, with or without slicing through Shinra forces, depends on what you're looking for.
Fireballs, yum!
Whether I'm talking about playing Mario spin-offs or Smash Bros. As a kid or as an adult, there is one thing that always remains the case. Yoshi will always be a good boy. Because of experiences with Mario Kart Wii as a kid, with my brother usually picking Yoshi in that game, at least until we unlocked King Boo, I was immediately interested in trying him out in Brawl, especially in subspace when he joined Link's side. The more I played of him in this mode and in normal matches, the more his playstyle grew on me. His air mobility is absolutely sublime, meaning he can easily close the gap between him and his opponents. and he has fantastic aerials to back it up. My personal favorite being his down aerial, because you'd be surprised just how much you can do if you get your opponent in just the right spot. But because of how he is in the air, and the fact that his second jump might as well be his recovery, he treats that out for his up B not being helpful for getting back on stage vertically, though it can still be used for horizontal distance, and it has some uses as an attack. I love playing as Yoshi across Brawl, Smash 4, and Ultimate because of how fluid he feels, and stylish plays with him just give me the feeling of delightful cheekiness. Edge guarding with him feels cheeky, using his down B feels cheeky, especially if the opponent forgets about it, racking up those numbers with his down air feels cheeky, and need I mention putting your opponent into an egg over a pit? Heck, causing troubles on purpose is encouraged more since Yoshi's floatiness has its upsides, and he won't die that quickly normally since he's the same weight as Captain Falcon on Smash 4 and Ultimate, or heavier than him in Brawl, but details. I will say Ultimate has my favorite version of the little guy, because I feel he nailed the fluidity the most there, but really, any version of Yoshi just makes me happy. That's something Yoshi tends to do no matter where he shows up, but that means he's still doing his job really well.
Yoshi wins!
Well, since I have a very nostalgic connection to Brawl, I feel like bringing this character up will be an absolute necessity, both for the history I have with them, and for another reason I think a lot of you might piece together. Back when I first played the game, Meta Knight was one of the first characters my brother and I got attached to. I forget what the reasoning was, but maybe it was because they looked cool, or had moves that looked cool, or that awesome cutscene in Subspace very briefly clashed with more. But whatever it was, a pretty big connection was formed. Yeah, Meta Knight basically owned Brawl with how comically overpowered he was, but 12-year-old me really could not put that together at the time and just went, haha, cool tornado drill move, go wee! In peace. But during the Smash 4 days, as I actually started to improve at the games more, I really appreciated how much Meta Knight was balanced. He may have been knocked off his throne, but the ways in which he was nerfed don't feel that excessive. He may not hit the hardest or have the best range with Galaxia, but what Meta Knight has remained top-notch in is mobility and combo potential. Having 5 mid-air gems combined with good airspeed is already a plus, but each one of his specials are useful for coverage. Mach Tornado's amazing horizontal speed, Drill Rush's ability to be influenced even to 90-degree angles, Dimensional Cape's teleportation, and Shuttle Loop covering serviceable vertical distance without the glide. Meta Knight can really track you down wherever you are and find a way back to safety. His tilts are also excellent for starting combos with the collision on Galaxia, and if you aren't carrying your opponent to the Blast Zone with a combo, then he has a really good variety of KO options on the stage. I feel like part of my love with Meta Knight comes from the context of what he was back in Brawl. The way he was properly balanced was just right, as the core of what makes him fun never went anywhere. It was just refined, and that ultimately makes him a really good piece of Smash gameplay history to have. Especially since we have a character where rebalancing from game to game was pretty excessive.
Meta Knight wins!
Is my destiny.
That is but a taste of our fury!
Do you yield? I do not.
The fact that Bowser got on this list at all is a poetic redemption arc. I really did not like playing as him in Brawl. Moving with him felt like he had glue underneath his feet while on the ground, and like gravity was inconsistent with him in the air. All his attacks feel like they take way too long to come out and end, and some of them even have insanely wacky hitboxes. Come Smash 4 and Ultimate, and it's an absolute night and day difference. I legit don't know what kind of coffee he drank to go from being one of Smash's slowest characters to being one of the fastest heavies, but whatever it was, giving that to him was a great choice. He controls much better in the air too, so using his aerials for combos and edge guarding feels good, and is very practical, and he can recover decently well too. Bowser can also rack up a lot of damage with the specials. I particularly enjoy using the Wrestling Slam, but the cheekiest thing about Bowser to me is his super armor. He can power through most jabs in the game, so he can't be stopped by most quick strikes when he's about to land even the likes of his tilt attacks. And even if he is disrupted, he's definitively the heaviest character in the game. So matches where players are able to get him up to this percent aren't uncommon. And this route could also lead you to getting some free hits with his down special, which is great against shields, and his new side smash. Seriously, this attack is OP! The massive hitbox and the ability to KO even middleweight characters at low percentages is a recipe for devilish fun. And that's what I love about Bowser. He just has so much that gives me this rush of excitement, and the amount of cheese he can pull is comically hilarious a lot of the time. He almost feels like a completely new character than the one we had before, and it goes to show how much better a character can become with just the right updates and reworks.
Bowser wins!
got an invitation to join Smash!
Yes! Yes! Holy yeah! Pyra and Mythra are amazing. I'll admit that I may not like Xenoblade 2 as much compared to the original, or even 3, but I find both Pyra and Mythra to be really charming characters. Pyra with her friendship with Rex and sort of being a teen mom, and Mythra for having more of a smarmy attitude that doesn't get grading. Both are a joy to watch in the original game, so putting that with hoping Xenoblade gets more Smash representation, and you get this. And man, both of them are wonderful to play as. Probably the biggest thing to note is that they're the first fully original fighter to use different forms that have their own properties since Pokemon Trainer back in Brawl, and to a lesser extent, Zero Suit Samus back in Brawl. And with how much they improved on this concept with Ultimate's Pokemon Trainer, the Aegis really did take things a step further. Pyra has a lot of destructive attacks with a ton of kill power, at the cost of having lower frame data and far slower attacking speed, while Mythra's attacks are mostly lacking in power and knockback, but her blistering speed and excellent frame data make her ideal for overwhelming the opponent and preparing them for the knockout. The two are essentially meant to complement one another through their differences. Their control speed and specials are definitely not the same, but because they share a lot of animations and their attacks have similar ranges, it's designed in a way where you can get an idea for one based on the other. Shifting between the two is not as jarring as going from Zelda to Sheik in Brawl, and the learning curve is a little lower in my opinion. It also helps that transforming with the down B is instantaneous and has invincibility frames, meaning it can be used for evasion. Strategies for what moves you use and when become a lot more fun with this by your side, especially offstage. Just be sure to have Mythra be the one to try and recover, because she has much better airspeed, and her up special can be useful for a little boost, unlike Pyra where using her up B over a pit results in this happening. With how much versatility Pyra and Mythra have, they are among the most fun I've had playing with a DLC character in all of Ultimate, and I think this is solid proof that Sakurai and the dev team fully understand how to make transformation fighters work at their best in Smash, which I will always give credit for. Sadly, this came at the cost of Rex only getting a Mii costume. At least seeing one of those two with that Mii is a pretty funny image. I will never forget the day when Cloud was revealed for Smash. It was a glorious sight.
I guess he took that one personally.
Sephiroth was a character that I really wasn't thinking about, let alone prioritizing, because Cloud getting in with a stage and only 2 songs seemed to be the most Final Fantasy VII would have in Smash, but man, I'm glad Sephiroth cleaved the reasons why not in 2 and blew me away with how he plays. The best I can describe it is, imagine the feeling of coolness I get with Mewtwo, and crank that up to 11. With how long as Masamune is, a large chunk of Sephiroth's attacks have some of the most range out of any fighter in the game. I particularly enjoy using this range to have the blade go through platforms and edges to land the hit. It definitely has its uses, but someone decided that some of them should also have a tipper, meaning more damage at a certain point. If you're good at spacing and timing, this can lead to some nasty kill confirms. One of them is also incredibly viable for breaking shields, and believe me, you do not want him to break your shield, because the specials are where Sephiroth shines brightest. Scintilla is pretty straightforward, but still handy, and Shadow Flare can be cheekily fun with the right setup. But Flare and Octoslash? Flare is handy in all of its formats, because the base one can travel long distances, which is good for closing gaps. Mega Flare means a good balance between distance and power, but if you manage to catch your opponent in a Giga Flare, which only explodes at close range... Wow, that is so intimidating, but so cool. Octoslash is probably my favorite. It looks stylish, and altogether, the hits do a truckload of damage, but being able to angle it in several directions makes it practical. I love using it off stage to attack the opponent when they're vulnerable, rather than try to recover with it. Gets even better if he's in winged form, which is a comeback mechanic that, while beyond your control, improves his attack power, ground speed, and airspeed, on top of giving him an extra jump and smash attack super armor. Be grateful for that kneecap. Sephiroth may be a mixed bag in frame data, and his height and weight combo may not be the greatest, but when you're in prime position to give your foes despair, does that all feel genuinely satisfying? The attacks, the extra attributes, the animations, the demeanor, I love it all.
Sephiroth wins!
Going off what I said back in the Pyro and Mythra segment, a generally positive opinion on a fighter as a character in the game they come from can affect how excited I am for them to be in Smash, let alone how much I like playing as them. Obviously that's not a criterion for this list because I can only go off topic for so long, but I always get that feeling of happiness when I see a character that I love be included in the roster and want to try them out. Case in point, Lucina. It's really funny because I've never really gotten into Marth as a fighter. He's never been unreliable in any game, but I found his emphasis on zoning with his tipper to be more distracting than fun. I'm glad he's shown a little more personality expression over the course of the games compared to how kind of stoic I found him in Brawl, but by then, Lucina already got my attention. Not only do I love her in Awakening, not to mention other Fire Emblem games where she shows up in, but as a fighter in Smash, she just appeals to me more. Not having the tipper means her damage output is more equally spread across her falchion. While I can understand why this would make her less rewarding to some, to me, it just made her easier to learn and more fun to play. Besides, I still find the cooler things you can do with her rewarding all the same. She's incredibly nimble on the ground and the air, and her attacks are really fast and have excellent frame data. The likes of her up B, neutral air, and forward air are great out of shield options, and her side B is very versatile for combos. Her grabs are handy in starting them up, and even her counter is relatively forgiving. If I had to describe Lucina's playstyle, it would be snappy. She really doesn't waste much time on having attacks that look cool individually. They shine together in a combo game, rewarding fast reactions and attack timing, and that's what really draws me back to her for more, even more than the likes of Roy or even Chrom. The future may not be written, but she will absolutely write one for herself and help others write theirs.
You'll never defeat me.
And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming on Ultimate's DLC. I'd only heard about how many people, including some of my friends, adored Persona 5 by late 2018, but even then, the announcement that the main character, Joker, was going to be one of Ultimate's first DLC fighters was a complete caffeine shot of a surprise. The way this announcement was handled was just about perfect, with the Phantom Thieves essentially hijacking the entire theater for it. And man, I'm enthralled as to how much effort they put into him for both fitting in with the roster mechanically, and translating some of his own game's mechanics and even style into the format of a platform fighter. He's naturally fast on his feet and in the air, and a lot of his attacks come out really quickly, and can segue into one another thanks to not a lot of them having high knockback. Heck, his grappling hook can be used to continue them, on top of being a good tool for recovery. There's also him being able to use his neutral special in many ways, like hopping with it from his natural position to spinning around for aerial coverage, and his side special, Iha, can deal damage over time if it connects. All these attacks work their way into any combo very naturally, and they could work with Joker's pretty small pool of reliable KO moves, if it weren't for his biggest feature.
It's clobbering time.
Yep, after filling up his Rebellion gauge, Arsene comes out, and Joker gets a serious power boost. His neutral and side specials get explosive new power, all of his melee strikes hit way harder, shout out to his down aerial being able to spike, and you know what? Why can't we give him a counter that also doubles as a reflector? Joker as a fighter may require a little precision to use, but I would argue that his learning curve isn't as big as, say, Zelda, Rosalina, or Shulk. I think anyone can get the hang of him. He's so much fun to play around with, and he makes any match such a spectacle to witness, especially with how stylish and kinda show-offy he's animated. I'm totally cool with these animations though, right down to the end screen of his final smash being the final screen of the match if it KOs, because it shows just how much love and attention to detail went into him. Even if other characters got tons of love too, I still find Joker one of the best in terms of what the Fires passes have to offer.
Who's next?
And here we are, the fires I personally like to refer to as my Supreme 7. Yeah, I have no shame in thinking of the Sinister 6 for that name. Basically, they're the fires that despite my skill level or how many fires I pick up, I can always come back to them for a massively fun, yet very comfortable time. Despite the fact that 5 of these have genuinely being likable characters in their own series, IMO, and or some kind of hype behind their announcement, on top of being fun to play here, in number 7's case, Wolf just makes me feel cool. So you have young me, who had never played a Star Fox game at that point, already really enjoying Fox and to a lesser extent Falco for their cool demeanor. And then there's a revisit to a subspace level where there's this little door that wasn't there before, and then this guy just drops in looking sick on the other side, and my preteen mind goes, "You are awesome." And then it takes me a few tries before I finally unlock him. That's the story of how I immediately started to love Wolf, and how I was sad when he was removed in Smash 4, and overjoyed to see him return in Ultimate. Everything else made him a proud member of my Supreme 7. In concept, Wolves doesn't do that much new compared to what we've seen with Fox or Falco, but it's the execution that matters. He's not as fast on the ground, but his airspeed is absolutely top-notch for air combos, with his neutral and forward airs being handy in catching opponents off guard, and the down air being able to spike. He falls pretty fast too, so he's immensely hard to keep track of once he's airborne, unless he's using one of his specials for recovery. I also love his blaster for being a great snap into potential combos, or even confirms because of how it stuns opponents pretty easily. My personal favorite confirm though is absolutely the down throw into side special in Ultimate, because if the opponent is just the right percent, Wolf can throw them into the general area where the side special can spike the target. It is insanely risky, but it makes me feel good. That's how a lot of my favorite plays go. Whether it's that, or doing something like using his up B in any direction for another knockout, Wolf encourages taking loads of risks for cooler plays, but it doesn't feel borderline unreasonable, nor does he ask for a lot out of the player just to learn how to play him. It's rewarding to be experimental and risky with what he can do, and every hunt is a joy. He will be the one to take you down.
Playtime's over, Star Fox.
I really was not expecting this character to be a member of my Supreme 7, but hey, guess weird things happen.
The crystal coconut is mine! All mine!
King K. Rool absolutely had a wonderful trailer, but I can think of others that got more of a reaction out of me. It's really only when I saw how popular he became among YouTubers that I watch that I decided to give him a shot, and I have yet to look back on that decision. His mixture of aerials and tilts that hit like cannonballs, if you know what I mean, and have great frame data for heavy standards, and 2 projectiles to get combos and confirm set up, make him fun as is, but the cheekiest thing about this fat crocodilian is that golden belly. As long as it has enough stamina, any attack that uses it is granted super armor, meaning he can plow through certain attacks with it and be no worse for wear. Sure, it's best to keep an eye on it, but considering how sturdy it is, and how some attacks that use it aren't out for very long, you can use it for some downright devilish plays. Heck, this belly can also be used as a counter and a reflector in case you want to go further. Heck, the arrows are great for offstage play because 2 of them can spike, and its up special has some of the best potential for recovery in the game. Somebody also gave the propeller a hitbox because they thought they were being funny. Some other things I find really cheeky about him are the fact that he's able to bury the opponent with 2 different moves, which 9 times out of 10 means he's basically taking a stock right there, and his down smash not only keeps the belly armor, but also has him jumping off the ground for a bit, which can lead to the opponent missing their ground moves a good chunk of the time. It's delightful how much K. Rool has to play with, despite how he can easily be punished for failing a lot of these. He's always my first choice when I'm about to play as someone who could cause a bunch of mischief and cheese on the stage, and I love that feeling when playing heavies the most. Dang K. Rool, you may not be the king of this list, but you are definitely the king of all heavies in my eyes.
King K. Rool wins!
Okay, I know it called back to my reaction to Pyra and Mithra, but just let me call back to this one. It deserves it.
Oh! No! 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 No, 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 no! No! Oh! What? I'll say!
I am so happy I was there to record that. As someone who legitimately did want Sora in Smash Bros., despite knowing the hoops Sakurai would need to jump through in order to invite him, I'm still shocked he was able to make it. This is truly how far we've come in terms of celebrating video games, and I cannot think of a better fighter to end Smash Ultimate's DLC. And he delivered on the gameplay as well. Despite not being the fastest in the air, Sora has some of the best aerial coverage in the game, period. You can chase down your opponent wherever they are on stage to score some damage, with his forward air being a good KO combo depending on the distance, and still have enough room to recover even if you used his ridiculously high and floaty double jump. His aerial sweep plus Sonic Blade combo covers so much distance, which is what makes him top of the class in offstage play. Being as floaty as he is gives you a lot more wiggle room to line up what moves you want to use with him, and when, since you don't need to think as quickly, and things can still easily work out, implying you still have the time being asked of you. You actively have to try in order to botch your recovery with him, let alone SD. Heck, Aerial Sweep is also a reliable KO move, and you can pull off some good mind games with Sonic Blade, as long as you're not using it against shields. And because his jabs and aerials have excellent frame data, some of his throws make good combo starters. His magic is also good for mind games. I in particular never get tired of freezing opponents for either a finishing blow, or just seeing them falling to the blast zone. And his counter being able to stop every attack and nullify projectiles makes it really versatile. Fighting with Sora in the air is always fun to do, because of the amount of options he has that can easily circumvent any downsides, like some end lag here and there, and generally being on the lighter side. He's hands down my favorite of Ultimate's DLC fighters, and for a character I really wanted who won the Smash ballot, and basically served as Ultimate's grand finale, barring spirits, that's a dream come true.
Sora wins!
Smash Wii U in 3DS is definitely in an awkward predicament in terms of what people remember it for. On the one hand, I love what it tries to do was done better in Ultimate. A good chunk of the single player content kind of fell flat, with few notable exceptions, and Nintendo's weird time in 2015 and 2016 definitely showed it. But on the other hand, I feel its control, speed, and fighting feel were improved a lot from Brawl. The new stages are amazing, and it had a spectacular lineup of newcomers, even before looking at the DLC. We've already met quite a few of them on here, but with the base roster, words cannot describe how happy I was to see the game include the Goddess of Light. Not long after I started making countdowns, Palutena was my most wanted character at the time. It seemed extremely logical to do, since Uprising was still fresh on everyone's minds, and I felt so validated when it was announced she'd be in. By the way, this trailer is absolutely incredible. So happy they got the animation team behind Medusa Rising and Palutena's Revolting Dinner to do it. This largely played a part as to why I enjoyed playing as her as much as I did. That, and I took having a different opinion than the norm way too seriously back then. Looking back at her Smash 4 iteration, well, I definitely see why she didn't catch on, with how generally predictable she is at base value, which was what the player was stuck with on 4 Glory. I still think playing as her is fun. She has a great air game, as the hitboxes and frame data of many of her aerials can easily catch people off guard, her up air has really good launch power, and a lot of other attacks have some really handy utility. The dash attack and back air grant her temporary invincibility, and her reflect, side smash, and down smash have win boxes. That last one may not sound like much, but try using these when your opponent is getting close to the ledge, and you'll see some mischievous results. There's also the light pillar, which has great power and excellent vertical range. Love this attack, especially for catching opponents that are attacking from above. However, the biggest thing I felt caused some ire towards Smash 4 Palutena, especially back then, is that I believe she fell victim to being a character to show Smash 4's admittedly underutilized custom moves. She's one of the few characters whose specials are completely different from one another, rather than just being the same move but with different properties. Letting her go nuts with the moves that can be replaced felt great to do, from a strong torpedo side special to making her faster than Sonic. Too bad you couldn't use them in 4 Glory, so you're stuck with an offensive special that, while useful for your utility, doesn't hit that hard, and really just trips the foe rather than launch them, and the reflected counter are their own separate specials, which definitely made their implementation even less noticeable. But the story does have a happy ending, because that burden was lifted in Ultimate, and man did she flourish. Putting the counter and the reflect on the same special was a great call. Explosive Flame is amazing for KOs and mind games, and everything that was great about her before has been refined here. There's loads of different combos and mischievous plays she's now capable of. I particularly like sniping with Explosive Flame in weird spots, and using her aerials for some insane combos. The neutral aerial became a meme for a reason. She's downright dazzling, and I am happy that her popularity grew after awkward beginnings. Before the game's release in the West, the main protagonist, Corrin, was chosen to be one of the last DLC fighters for Smash 4. One of my favorite characters to play as in that game, and Ultimate by the way.
Yep.
Out of all the cool things Smash 4's DLC did, bringing back various veterans, branching out into different third-party franchises, and bringing in Bayonetta at the end, even I find it weird that my favorite character from it happens to be the one that was obviously a commercial for a new game. But as someone who adores Fates and ended up loving Corrin here, I am not complaining in the slightest. I know how we all like to say how this was the point where Smash Bros. Was going a little overboard with Fire Emblem, and make the age-old too many sword fighters complaint that Byleth's trailer openly pokes fun at, but I can get over it because Corrin brings a lot of new things to represent the series. Despite the Yato being the first weapon you'll notice, the blade honestly feels very secondary compared to Corrin's dragon abilities. It feels like just using the sword is only getting things going, like with the starting jabs and tilts, though it is the source of a pretty awesome up air. While the attacks where Corrin transforms at least parts of their body into some dragon form are the main attraction. Between growing a massive fanged ball from their arms for a flurry of bites, or a projectile that can be followed up by a bite if the opponent is close enough, growing wings for a bit of aerial mobility for their up special and back air, both of which have good damage output and launch power, and growing a pike from their arms for several attacks, including a far-reaching side smash that has a tipper, Byleth took a couple notes on that one, and the Slide Special, which can plant Corn into any solid surface and act out in any direction with the right and left, allowing them to do a really strong kick. I love this one, especially because of the versatility it has for mobility, and it can pin fighters in place if they get caught in it, meaning, at higher percentages, you could just keep them there for a decently long period of time until the attack ends and things go nowhere, the opponent escapes, or you just kick them. That cracks me up every time.
Oh, look at that. I've been impaled.
They don't have too many attacks that use their full dragon form, but they do use it for some really strong throws, one of my favorite counters in the game that hits like a truck and acts as an AoE blast rather than a frontal strike like most of the other Fire Emblem characters, and one of my favorite final smashes, which looks and feels amazing. I really like how experimental the dev team was willing to get with Corn, since the series had yet to represent anything dragon related in playable form at that point, as well as now since adult Tiki got relegated to being an assist trophy, and no matter the circumstance, I have so much fun playing as them. While I doubt they'll come back in a future Smash game, it'd be a big shame if they were to go, because I think they have plenty of surprises that show more of what Fire Emblem can be in Smash Bros. That I hope they do more with in the future. Whatever future that may be. Also, play Fire Emblem Fates. It's very good. I think I could get away with saying that the top 3 are definitely the me entries. The ones you could probably guess just based on previous videos I've made, let alone anything else I've said in other places. What I'm getting at is, if you were guessing that Sonic was going to be on here, well, here he is. But yeah, Sonic's always been one of my favorite video game characters, and even fictional characters, so I wanted him to be one of my favorite fighters back when my brother and I first unlocked him in Brawl. And he not only did become one of them, but I loved him even more as I got better and as the series went on. He embodies everything I love about rushdown characters with heavy emphasis on combos. Having the fastest dash speed in the game is one thing, but he has numerous moves and grabs he can use to get going, and they can segue into one another with just the right positioning. Some of my personal favorites are using one of his aerials out of a roll attack, getting the opponent past the ledge to eventually spike them with the down air at point blank, or in Smash 4's case, the up throw to double up air confirm. Sadly, that last one was toned down in Ultimate. I also never tire of KOing with a side smash, if only to make jokes about how funny the hitbox is, as well as how small Sonic's hurtbox is while doing it. The homing attack in Ultimate is also fun for mind games if you want to use it to close the gap, or charge it for a harsh blow. And him having good aerial mobility on his own makes his offstage recovery game surprisingly versatile, especially with Ultimate's directional air dodging. And this may sound minuscule, but I get a laugh whenever I use the up special while off stage, and the spring that Sonic uses just bonks the opponent down below before they fall into the blast zone. That's funny, especially if it messes up their recovery. And that's what I love about Sonic. There's plenty of matchups where I feel like I can get the upper hand with when it comes down to the wire, and yet I can also play him just to be more in my comfort zone and be a bit of a troublemaker while I'm at it. Even if they took away his iconic "you're too slow" line. Really, it takes a lot for me to dislike Sonic himself in basically anything, but he deserves to still be one of my favorites across all of Smash Bros.
Let's do that again sometime.
Fox. I definitely considered him to be the starting point of this list, because while I definitely enjoy using him in the newer games, my nostalgia with his Brawl iteration is my biggest reason for mentioning him. Regardless, he's still an icon. Incineroar. While he isn't the most practical heavy, his moves are just so much fun to use, especially since he is one of my favorite counters in the game, and his personality on display is just delightful. Byleth. Almost made the cut because they have tons of moves that are destructively satisfying. Shoutouts to any attack that uses a mirror, and the up B, which is basically a reminder not to try and spike them off stage. Bayonetta, a really fun character for combos, and all her KO options are just oozing with style, as do her taunts. Probably would have made it on here if not for how her nerfs in earlier versions of Ultimate really dragged down what made her fun. Thankfully, this was amended in later updates, but still. I blame EVO 2018. Robin. Would have been on here if their downsides weren't overkill in some places, namely the bad dash speed and dismal grab range, but they are still really creative as a fighter, encouraging you to play more tactically. Chrom. Even if they brought the funny jokes to an end, I am happy he got his chance, and he does make a lot of what works about other Fire Emblem characters fun in his own way. I just personally feel more comfortable with Lucina. Greninja. Really slick character who has some really fun aerials and specials. Shadow's to Substitute, another one of my favorite counters, and Shadow Sneak for mind games. And finally, Pokemon Trainer. I'm sort of rubbing Smash 4 Charizard in here too, since a lot of his benefits carried over into Ultimate when he was reunited. The trainer really does adapt a lot of what makes Pokemon as a series special, and they're capable of some really fun possibilities for combos, since all three Pokemon play differently. Also, I do have a big sense of nostalgia for them in Brawl.
And that makes 2.
Pokemon's basically the reason why I'm into video games at all, so trying to learn about Smash Bros. With Pikachu was practically fate. It was already written that he'd be among my top 10, but how great he's been across every game I've played secured his place at number 1. Between all the things I love about the other members of my Supreme 7, balanced variety of moves, extremely fluid and responsive frame data, great combo potential and speed, encouragement of bold plays, Pikachu here has a little bit of everything. Pikachu's ground and air speed feels just right. He isn't the absolute fastest, but he's fast enough for closing the gap on the foe and escaping feel natural. And given Pikachu is a really small target, you might be able to pull a lot of the more fun and stylish stuff off while dodging potentially strong blows by pure instinct. That goes further in the air because all his aerials are great for combo potential and edge guarding, and 2 of his specials are handy for recovery. Quick attack can especially take you really far if you know what angles to go at. Pikachu's grabs and throws also feel perfect for setups. His neutral special, while weak, does have a really good stun factor, making it great for spacing, and I can't go without mentioning Thunder. It has been balanced a bit since Brawl with how comically spammable it was. Trust me, I never stopped using this move in Brawl when I was younger, but it's still amazingly strong. What's probably my favorite thing to do with Pikachu is grab and up throw the opponent at an optimal percentage, then use Thunder to spike them down into the blast for a nasty KO confirm, since the origin point of the bolt can spike, but it's very small. Pikachu in general has a good amount of mechanical depth to form these kinds of plays, like Quick Attack is handy for mix-ups, and his down air spikes in ultimates, but as a whole, I feel anyone can learn what he has to offer very naturally, and there are rewards for all kinds of players, casual and competitive. He is one of my first choices, regardless if I'm playing against more skilled players, or against people completely new to the game. In fact, I think Pikachu makes for a really good entry-level character, someone you can play to learn about Smash Bros., and maybe get you interested in trying out some more characters. Combine that with absolutely adorable taunts, and I have no trouble letting Pikachu top this list. I think Pikachu's been great across every Smash game I've played, a luxury I can give to only 2 other Smash 64 veterans, and even if that changes somewhere down the line, I'll still hold on to all the good times I've had with this little guy. No matter what.
Pikachu wins!
I'm the Lightning Ripper, and happy 25th anniversary, Smash Brothers, and thank you for everything you have brought to the series, Mr. Sakurai. I wish you the best for whatever you decide to do from here. See you all.
Jack!
Plants? What are you still doing here? The video's over. I'm just wrapping up.
Maybe you are, but I'm not done just yet.
Why? You want to continue playing? Is that it?
It's not just a matter of playing. There's something else I wanted to address.
And that would be...
You said settle it in Smash, right? Well, in order to do that, we need to set the stage.